You blinked, and just like that, the NHL free agent market has practically vanished. And if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, the feeling is even more bitter. Big names have already signed contracts. The obvious targets are gone, and that hole left by Mitch Marner on the top line remains. Open, painful, and, so far, unsolved. But what if the answer to that void isn't in the form of veteran? What if, instead of a well-established name, the Leafs bet on a young, inconsistent talent with raw potential? That's where Lukas Reichel comes in. And that's where the conversation begins. According to a proposal published by Heavy.com, the Toronto Maple Leafs are reportedly exploring a trade with the Chicago Blackhawks involving young prospects and some draft picks. Reichel would go to Toronto, while Nick Robertson, David Kampf, and 2 5th-round picks, 2027 and 2028, would head to Chicago. At first glance, it seems like a secondary trade. But look a little closer, and you'll see that this deal could shake the foundation and future of both franchises. Lukas Reichel, 22 years old, was the 17th overall pick in the 2020 draft. A skilled, agile winger with great vision, he still hasn't found the right fit in Chicago. In 70 games last season, he tallied 22 points, 8 goals and 14 assists, but spent much of the year stuck on the fourth line. Reichel's contract is entering its final year, worth $2.4 million total, and he is expected to represent Germany in international competitions. Still under team control, he has become a trade chip on the NHL radar, and Toronto, with its recent history of betting on fresh starts, stands out as one of the most logical destinations. But it's important to understand why Chicago, still playing at a high level, young player represents a short not long ago, was viewed as a core part of their future. Reichel failed to establish himself in the top 6 full of experiments and changes, and instead of progressing, he plateaued. That doesn't mean the talent disappeared. It means he didn't fit. The same could be said about Nick Robertson. Drafted in the 2nd round in 2019, he showed flashes of brilliance, like that goal in his first playoff game, but never found consistency or a long-term spot in the Leafs' top 6. In 69 games, he scored 15 goals and added 7 assists, nearly identical numbers to Reichel, turning this into a mirror trade of unfulfilled potential. And maybe that's what makes it so fascinating. 2 young, talented players in desperate need of a change of scenery to truly flourish. A gamble for both teams with no guarantees, but hope on both sides. The extra factor in the equation is David Kampf. At 29 years old, the Czech forward still has 2 years left on his contract, with a $2.4 million cap hit per season. His role as a bottom 6 center is clear, but his 13 points in 59 games no longer justify the cost. And including him in the deal allows the Leafs to balance the cap and clear roster space. Chicago, in the midst of a rebuild, can absorb that contract without much trouble, especially with the addition of 2 5th-round picks. Kampf is also familiar with the Blackhawks system, having played 4 seasons in Chicago before joining Toronto. His presence could help stabilize the lower lines during this transition period. Now, let's take a deep breath and look more closely at the players involved. Reichel might not have been the savior in Chicago, but there are signs his talent has been underutilized. His international play with Germany is solid. His offensive instincts are strong, and he's never had the chance to play alongside talents like Austin Matthews, William Nylander, or John Tavares. Imagine Reichel receiving passes from those guys. Imagine him with space and confidence. Analyst Gordon Monroe from Editor and Leaf has already pointed out that in Toronto, Reichel would have more tools and less immediate pressure to develop, and it's worth remembering, he's still only 22. On top of that, the Leafs' offensive structure favors creative players who know how to find space between the lines. Reichel might find in Toronto what he lacked in Chicago: continuity, a defined system, and most importantly, meaningful ice time alongside stars. Nick Robertson, on the other hand, might be the most symbolic player of the Leafs' recent development frustrations. A passionate fan of the team, an intense player, an electric style, but always a step behind expectations. His injuries didn't help, that's true, but the bigger issue seems to be fit and opportunity. A change of scenery might be a relief for him. In Chicago, the rebuild brings minutes, patience, and fewer spotlights. An ideal environment to rebuild confidence. And maybe, just maybe, reveal that there's still a top 6 player hidden there. The Blackhawks could benefit from a motivated and healthy Robertson, especially if he lines up next to Connor Bedard or Kevin Korchinski in a young, energetic unit. And what does Toronto really gain from this? The opportunity to reshape a younger, cheaper attack with room to grow. Reichel doesn't arrive as a star, but he could become one. More importantly, he at least partially fills a void left by Mitch Marner in the top 6. Brad Treliving has made it clear that's been the top priority since number 16 left. And with nearly $3 million in cap space, the Leafs have the flexibility to make this type of gamble. A move that combines boldness with financial prudence. It's a more cautious, less flashy approach than fans might expect, but it could pay off in the medium term. And if it works, it might be the foundation of a revamped and more dynamic offense. From the Blackhawks' perspective, the logic is clear. Reichel didn't fit, and Chicago needs to speed up the rebuild around Bedard. Robertson could thrive if given time. Kampf is just a transitional piece. And even 5th-round picks help replenish the system. It's not a franchise-altering trade, but it is one that resolves a deadlock and opens new paths. Maybe the Blackhawks simply decided it was time to reset the board and redistribute their chips. And if that means turning a disappointment like Reichel into 2 useful assets plus picks, it's hard to argue against. In the end, this trade is less about the now and more about what could be. It's about taking a chance. It's about accepting that not all talent blooms where it was first planted. And for the Leafs, it's a real shot to do something different. To bet on raw, promising talent that might rewrite the narrative of a roster scarred by recent frustrations. A franchise tired of coming up short needs to start taking risks that break the mold. This trade might not make headlines tomorrow, but 2 or 3 years from now, it could be the kind of story fans remember, with a smile on their face or a sigh of regret. So what about you, Leafs Nation? Is it worth it? Would you trade Robertson and Kampf for Reichel? Do you believe he can fill the void left by Marner? Or do you think the Leafs should aim higher? And from the Hawks side, do you think it was still worth trying with Reichel? Or was it finally time to move on? Leave your opinion in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell because more hot trades are coming and you won't want to miss them. See you next time, Leafs Nation.